which means they pay bugger all tax. And in particular, when we had this incredible surge in the price of gas globally, we estimated that the extra profits that the gas industry made off the back of the war in the Ukraine were around $40 billion. And that's extra profit.
Yep.
That's not profit. That's look what I found down the back of the couch. So the windfall that they made was about $40 billion. And hold on to your hats, about one of those billions will be paid in extra PRRT by design. Because it is so badly designed.
So if it was properly designed, we'd be raking in a lot more revenue from that $40 billion windfall profit.
One for Mum, one for Dad, and one for the country.
And there has never been a more exciting time to be an Australian.
Budgets are about choices, Fran, and you show what you value through the choices you make.
This is coal. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared. The Treasurer knows.
I want an economy that works for people, not the other way around.
We'll just end up being a third-rate economy, a banana republic.
Just follow the money.
G'day and welcome to Follow the Money, the Australia Institute's podcast that explains big economic issues in plain English. I'm Ebony Bennett, Deputy Director at the Australia Institute. And as long-time listeners of Follow the Money will know, Australia is the third largest exporter of fossil fuels in the world. And thanks to Russia's war on Ukraine, gas and coal companies are currently raking in windfall energy profits. In particular, the gas industry has enjoyed windfall profits of up to $40 billion. So surely Australia is at least getting its fair share of taxes out of the gas industry, right? Right?
Nope.
Well, households coast to coast are on the brink. Energy prices soaring, petrol through the roof.
Aussies are feeling the pain of rising prices and household budgets are struggling.
Cost of gas, which has already doubled this year and shows no sign of slowing.
Drivers are being stung every time they fill up their car, with the average fuel price sitting at around $2 a litre.
Gas companies are extorting businesses.
Multinational gas exporters currently enjoy generous tax concessions.
There's no doubt that in some cases companies are making windfall profits.
We've got multinational companies making extraordinary windfall profits whilst...
Cost of living is the number one issue for Australians right now.
Selling to overseas firms and companies and people is far more profitable than selling to Australians.
Australia's ample gas supply continues to be sent abroad.
Time they paid more tax.
The best antidote to global economic uncertainty is responsible economic management here at home.
But there are fresh warnings some services won't be sustainable in the long run unless the nation starts seriously talking about changes to tax.
The Petroleum Resource Rent Tax, or PRRT, is a tax on the profits of petroleum products, including crude oil and petroleum gas. And the PRRT is, to put it plainly, broken. Though gas company profits are through the roof, the amount of revenue collected by the government isn't really going up that much. In fact, it's so broken that Scott Morrison, architect of the failed gas-fired recovery, ordered Treasury to review it prior to the pandemic. And as Treasurer Jim Chalmers puts the final touches on the federal budget, it's clear that Australia has a revenue problem, and reforming the PRRT could generate a lot more revenue for Australia than it currently is. So, what exactly is wrong with the PRRT and how can we fix it? To talk about that, I'm chatting to Executive Director at the Australia Institute, Richard Dennis. G'day, Richard.
Hey, Eb.
So first of all, what is the Petroleum Resources Rent Tax? Why is there a special tax for petroleum resource rent? What is that?
Well, the idea of the Petroleum Resource Rent Tax was to help Australians get a fair share of the revenue from the oil and gas industry. So PRRT, Petroleum Resource Rent Tax. The rent's the confusing word. So people think of rent as, you pay rent for a house or maybe you rent a car. Economists, you'll be surprised to know, use language differently than others. We think full employment doesn't mean everyone's got a job. We think a rent means something different to most people. A rent is a kind of, it's an excess profit. It's more money than you need to get something. So, we understand if you're going to set up a milk bar and sell milkshakes, then if you didn't make a cent in profit, you wouldn't stick around and sell the milkshakes. We understand that if you're going to extract some resources out of the ground, if you don't make any money, you wouldn't do it. Like, no one would work for free. Staff wouldn't work for free. People won't set up companies and perform risky activities without making any money. But, big but, Most companies make far more money in Australia than they need to keep them doing their thing. And that extra bit's called a rent. Now, rents or excess profits are particularly common in the resources industry, so the first R in the PRRT. And that's because if I sell microphones for a living, I have to build a microphone. I have to invent a microphone.
Yeah. Got to get all the components.
Yeah, right. There's work there. And if I make milkshakes, I've got to buy the milk, got to buy the ice cream, and then I've got to pay someone, add it all up. But if I sell gas in Australia, most of the gas that I extract, nearly, all the offshore gas, the big wells you see offshore, the gas is free. So you'd be surprised to know it's very profitable to sell something
when your ingredient is free.
When the ingredient is free. And of course it's our resource. It's our oil, it's our coal, it's our gas. And unlike most countries, we often choose to give it away for free. And because we give it away for free and then they sell it at the highest price they can get, they make enormous profits.
Who would have thunk?
Who'd have thunk it? And that's the second R, that's the rent. So the Petroleum Resource Rent Tax is a rent tax, a tax on these extra profits that the petroleum industry makes. And we say it's the Petroleum Resource Rent Tax, but the oil and gas industry are kind of one and the same thing.
Yeah. And so how do we know the PRRT is broken? Why did Scott Morrison want a review into it?
Well, it depends. I mean, the oil and gas industry think it's fine. There's no problem here.
Nothing to see here.
Nothing to see here. It's working just the way they lobbied to make it work.
Yeah.
Which means they pay bugger all tax. And in particular, when we had this incredible surge in the price of gas globally, we estimated that the extra profits that the gas industry made off the back of the war in the Ukraine were around $40 billion. And that's extra profit.
Yeah.
Right? That's not profit. That's look what I found down the back of the couch. Is that 40 billion OC? Oh, I do believe it is. So the windfall that they made was about $40 billion. And hold on to your hats, about one of those billions will be paid in extra PRRT by design because it is so badly designed.
So if it was properly designed, we'd be raking in a lot more revenue from that $40 billion windfall profit.
Well, that's right. And to be clear, if we raked in anything up to $40 billion, if we collected all of that rent, remember the rent?
Yeah, it's the excess profits.
It's the excess profits. It's the profits that aren't required to keep them in business. It's just the bonus nice to have.
Yeah.
And who amongst us doesn't enjoy a 40 billion windfall? So keep in mind the gas industry in Australia was very profitable before the war.
Yeah.
And then after the war, they were 40 billion more profitable
than they were before.
So I mean this literally. In theory, if we taxed all of that, it wouldn't change their behaviour. They'd still be out there extracting gas and selling gas because they were happy to do it at the pre-war prices. They were happy to do it at the pre-war profits.
Yeah.
So they're not going to stop. They'll be angry, right? But yeah, so we got one. We could have got 40. Any number between 0 and 40 billion is, from an economist's point of view, available to us.
Yeah.
Our system is so crap, we picked up one. But what we know is, for example, in Norway, the Norwegian government has been raking in, 50, 60, 70% of the windfall.
50, 60 to 70% of the windfall.
Yep.
And we're going for
That's going to discourage investment. Yeah, we've gone with 1/40th.
1/40th compared to 70%.
And that's the reason I give that range is it's actually complicated slightly to calculate because those crazy Norwegians, they still actually, the public own a lot of the resources.
Yeah.
So the money actually comes straight back to them.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a tax. They just own it. And their tax system collects a lot.
Yeah.
So, we can quibble about how many percences, right? But let's just say a lot more than 1/40th was harmed in the creation of the Norwegian system.
Yeah. And I just come back to, we're in the middle of a cost of living crisis and we can't afford
Sorry, the gas industry are not in the middle of a you say we, let's be clear. You and I,
excluding the gas industry,
not having a cost of living crisis at all.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking in the context of the budget and, the Treasurer's been out there saying, oh, look, I think times are tough and we've got international economic headwinds and, we've inherited $1 trillion of liberal debt, as he calls it, and we just can't afford to even fund all the good ideas that we have. We clearly talk about having a revenue problem here.
Why are we so stupid?
Yeah, like, why haven't we fixed this before now? It seems like such a no-brainer.
Yeah, it's a choice, and it's a really dumb choice. Australia is lucky to have this enormous amount of natural resources. We are lucky. It's not through our skill that this continent has these resources sitting underneath of them, and not all continents do. So here we are sitting on these things, and before I answer your question, let's not forget we spend $12 billion a year subsidising this industry. Like, we haven't even got to how much. Like, let's never forget. Like, right now out there today, we're subsidising the oil and gas industry in the middle of this boom.
Yeah.
The Australian government is currently out there today funding exploration for more oil and gas that the UNFCCC, the UN Secretary General, the IEA says we won't even need.
Yeah.
But you and I as taxpayers are out there doing effectively the research and development for the fossil fuel industry, finding new pockets of gas for them, which the world says it doesn't want or need, and the science says we can't have. So we subsidise this stuff. And we've got this Petroleum Resource Rent Tax, which unfortunately, looks good on the box. We've got this special tax that kind of picks up something for taxpayers here. It just doesn't work.
Yeah.
And to be clear, Malcolm Turnbull had an inquiry into this on the premise that it wasn't collecting much tax.
Yep.
He was right. Scott Morrison's announced one. He was right. But just like it's still crazy talk in Australia to say, do we really need more oil and gas to tackle climate change? Heretical question in Australia. Yeah, here we are watching windfall profits, enormous profits being made, and maybe we'll tweak the PRRT. I hope we do.
Yeah.
But it absolutely... And when I say a no-brainer, when Nobel Prize-winning economist Joe Stiglitz was in Australia last year, it's literally what he said.
It's a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. He said it publicly. He said it privately to everyone he met with. He couldn't believe a country could be this weird.
Yeah, or stupid. You've talked about Norway, but I think I've heard you talk about this in the past and, mentioned Saudi Arabia and the fact that when oil prices go up, they don't feel poorer.
No.
But here in Australia, gas prices go up and that sends us into a cost of living crisis.
Yeah, here we are, world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas. Oh no, the price has gone up. Oh, the pain. I mean, imagine you were a strawberry farmer who panicked every time the price of strawberries went up. Right? That is how broken our tax system is, that we've basically given the right to extract our resource and sell our resource away for free. And then those companies are free to set the price. And then when they start charging us high prices for our stuff, we're like, if only there was a solution. Can't somebody think up a solution?
So just to get into the details a bit, why is the PRRT broken? Like, what is going wrong here? Is it that where we've set the prices too low? Is there loopholes that companies are exploiting? How could the government fix it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of big loopholes. And see, but the problem with calling them loopholes, it sounds like they're an accident.
Oops.
Yeah, how'd that get in there? Giving away $40 billion a year. So there are a couple of design features of the PRRT that make it very bad at collecting tax. So if you think of your own personal income tax situation, you have your taxable income, you have whatever you get paid for going to work or whatever your income is, and then you have tax deductions available. And we all know that you get to, deduct the cost of, the dinner you had when you were away for work, or, you if you're really lucky, you bought yourself a personal computer and, you got to deduct that from this year's tax, right? So everyone knows about tax deductions. With the Petroleum Resource Rent Tax, there's a whole bunch of very, very legal deductions. And the deductions are set up in a way that basically delay and sometimes completely avoid very profitable gas projects ever paying tax. So what happens is that if I'm an oil company, I spend a couple of $1 billion on my big oil rig, and I have to buy my oil rig before I get any money for my tax.
Yep.
So the way that the PRRT is set up allows me to keep track of all those expenses, which is, fair enough in some sense, but then I get to carry them forward into future years in ways which are just outrageously generous.
Yeah.
So what happens is that every gas project involves spending money on your gas project up front, before you get some revenue. There's no surprise here. No one sells gas before they build a rig.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't happen. Everyone builds a rig before they get some gas. And we designed a scheme where the deductions for building your rig don't just occur in the year where you built the rig. You can still be making deductions against that rig, decades after you built it. And the total deductions for your rig can be far more than the cost of your rig.
Yeah.
Again, not actually breaking the law because the law is stupid.
Yeah.
The other big loophole design feature is, say I'm, Richard's gas extraction company, and then I also own Richard's gas liquefaction company.
Yeah.
So I extract the gas and then I pipe it to somewhere, and liquefy a gas means basically you make it really cold, and when it's cold it takes up less room, and if it takes up less room you can put it on those big ships with the big bubbles that people have seen. So Richard owns the gas extraction and Richard owns the liquefaction company. Well, it's only Richard's gas extraction company that pays the Petroleum Resource Rent Tax. As luck would have it, Richard's gas refinery doesn't pay the PRRT. So someone might have thought of the idea that Richard's gas extraction company sells his gas to Richard's liquefaction company at a really low price. Oh, whoops. Turns out I didn't make much money extracting the gas.
Yeah.
Nah, there's no money in that. But boy, is my liquefaction company making a lot of money.
Yeah.
So basically,
exempt from the PRRT.
Doesn't pay the PRRT.
Yeah.
And then the other trick, which a lot of the mining companies have got busted for, is that even after all that happens, they set up a marketing hub in a tax haven like Singapore, and it turns out that extracting the gas isn't very profitable. No money in that. Refining the gas, not a lot of money in that. But sitting in Singapore selling the gas, ka-ching! Turns out all the profits get made by the marketing company, not by the, So, unfortunately, we're dumb enough to let this happen. Saudi Arabia, not so much. Norway, not so much. So, back to your original point. When the price of oil goes up, the Saudis are happy. When the price of oil goes up, the Norwegians are happy. When the price of oil and gas goes up, Australia's like, oh, how are we going to cope? Well, it's because we put these so-called loopholes in.
Yeah. So I guess I just want to come back to the budget and where Australia finds itself at this point in time. We've heard some rumours that there might be some PRRT reforms, but overall, Australia, we have talked a lot about the fact we've got a revenue problem and we're about to implement the stage 3 tax cuts. How important would PRRT reforms be as part of kind of tackling this bigger issue?
Well, look, if we go back to the start, $40 billion in windfall profits. 40 billion. How many of those 40 billion would you like? Because from an economist's point of view, they're free. Just grab them if you want them.
Yeah.
You're not going to dissuade, you're not going to discourage investment. You're not going to scare foreign, none of that's going to happen.
The gas industry's not going to pack up its oil rig that it's been tax deducting for 40 years.
Exactly. And unless you think that they started the war in the Ukraine to drive up the prices, they weren't expecting this.
Yeah.
This is literally a windfall. So how much of that windfall we wanted to grab is entirely up to us. So to be clear, step one, we should get rid of the subsidies for fossil fuels, $12 billion a year, what a waste. We could be collecting tens of billions of dollars more in resource rent taxes if we wanted, and with zero economic consequence. The resources would still be coming out of the ground. The companies that own them would be still selling them profitably and complaining because they don't get to hang on to it all. But we, the Australian public, would be so much better off. So, you're goading me bringing up stage 3 tax cuts right at the end of a podcast. But, here we are about to give away $250 billion in tax cuts to high-income earners. And we're worried about, the affordability of health, the quality of our education system, the declining quality of our public transport, or pretending we can't afford to invest in renewables and tackling climate change when we're literally giving tens of billions of dollars away.
Yeah. God, we haven't even touched on the climate impacts of being one of the largest exporters of LNG, but...
always glass half empty.
Well, we might wrap it up there. Thanks very much, Richard.
Thanks, Eb.
This episode was recorded on Monday, the 17th of April 2023, and things may have changed since recording. If you liked today's episode, please rate and review us. It helps other people to find the show. And if you love Follow the Money and want to help us continue to do work with impact and influence, please consider supporting us with a small tax-deductible gift today at australiainstitute.org.au. That's also where you can find all our latest research and content, including how to reform the PRRT and fix what's broken. We're on Twitter at the Oz Institute with an AUS. My Twitter handle is Ebony_Bennett with a _N_T, and Richard Dennis is at RDNS_TAI. Our producer Jennifer Macy is at Jennifer Macy, and she's away this week and we're sending her all our love. And today's episode is produced by Emily Perkins. Our theme music is by Jonathan McFeet from Pulse and Thrum, with additional music from Blue Dot Sessions. Thanks for listening.